And we're live. So welcome to the Bitcoin Digest, where we discuss all things Bitcoin. My name is Klandan, and this is an online show which goes out on Zoom every day from 9 p.m. UK time, and everyone's welcome to join. The joining instructions are, as you can see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, the links will be in the description and the show notes below. You could just join using a meeting ID and the passcode. The only rule on this podcast is that we do not talk about shitcoins. The only thing we talk about is Bitcoin. Of course, unless you're dumping on the shitcoins, then that's absolutely fine. So just a very quick, brief explanation of what this podcast is about. Podcast is just about Bitcoins. We keep it simple. I'm going to keep it simple. I love Bitcoin and I love talking about Bitcoin. So that's what I'm going to do. The first part of the show, I'll probably go through the Clark Moody dashboard and see what the state of the time chain is. And then we can also delve into the mempool a little bit and talk about what the state of the mempool is like. And then I've got a couple of articles that I'd like to talk about. And if there's anything that's on my mind after that, then yes, I'll riff a little bit on that. And then we'll bring this to a close. This should really last about 40 minutes, give or take. But yeah, here we go. So straight on to the Clark Moody's dashboard. Bitcoin is currently sitting at $26,865. And a single dollar will get you 3,722 sats. Current market capitalization for Bitcoin is $520 billion. So it's still over the $500 billion mark, which is good to see. In terms of mining, the hash rate for mining is currently 351.4 exahashes, with a difficulty adjustment of 48 trillion. Difficulty epoch is at 392, and we are, how many days away are we from the difficulty adjustment? I can't see that now. I'll come back to it. But yeah, so those are the key points from Clark Moody's dashboard. Let's see, what else have we got here? Reachable Bitcoin nodes, 17,096. Tor nodes, about 10,000. About 60% Tor nodes. Lightning Network, the Lightning Network capacity is at 5,364 Bitcoin. Worth about $144 million, 16,000 nodes in total. I guess that must be visible nodes. Tor capacity is about 3,500 BTC. Yeah, so there we are. That's the Clark Moody's dashboard. Now moving on to the mempool. So mempools are still very full. We've got about 191 blocks sitting in the mempool yet to be confirmed. The next block for confirmation is currently 81 sats of a VByte, virtual byte. So it's still pretty congested at the moment, but nothing compared to what it was last week. As you can see, just taking a quick look at the last few blocks, the rewards, the full rewards are back to the usual rate, around 6 to 7 BTC per block. But if we go back a little bit, say if we go back to a few days ago, let's see if we can get back to a couple of days ago. Yeah, so here we are, obviously looking around the 10th of May, right here, you can see that that's 11.3 Bitcoin. So yes, the fees were really quite high back then. So things seem to be calming down a little bit now. But yeah, all in all, it's been a crazy ride this last few weeks. With the whole ordinals business and the BRC20 stuff that's happening. I mean, obviously, I'm not a fan of it, clearly, but at the same time, Bitcoin has its inbuilt immune system that protects itself. And the high fees are a symptom of the network doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is when there's congestion, the fees goes up. It's just simple demand and supply. If demand is high and supply cannot match demand, prices would always go up. And once demand slows down and there's more supply than there is demand, then the prices of the mempool will go down. There is nothing wrong with Bitcoin. There's nothing wrong with the time chain. The time chain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Going back to the start, as you can see, all blocks continue to be full, which is well, it's interesting to see, at least. I'll say that. So I've got a couple of articles that I just wanted to touch on here. The first one talks about this BRC20 tokens. It's written by Dylan Leclerc about a week or so ago. I think it's interesting just because it gives a little bit more perspective on what's going on. And I just thought it might be something that people might find interesting to listen to. So it says that the ordinals inscriptions craze that we covered a few months ago focused on the gaining popularity of non-fungible tokens on Bitcoin and the impact on transaction fees, which were around 5 sats vbyte on average in late February through March. In our last article about ordinals, we observed that there wasn't a major increase in transaction fees beyond the time of the 100,000 inscription. And then it goes and said the inscription count reached 1 million on April 8th, about a month and a half after the publication of that piece. Now, less than another month later, the total number of inscriptions have reached over 3.4 million, thanks to a new type of text-based inscription. So I guess the previous saga, or the first type of saga, was in relation to the JPEGs on the blockchain, and now it's moved to the JSON on the blockchain, and that's what I'm reading that to be. And rather than the pictures on the blockchain, which were the NFTs, they're now the JSONs on the blockchains, which are basically the shitcoins. So they've moved. I don't know if it's a graduation or if it's a degradation, whichever it is. Either way, it's progressed or digressed or regressed into shitcoining on Bitcoin. Very interesting. So it goes on to say BRC tokens are kind of tokens that use the same inscription model in the form of text to deploy and mint a token on top of Bitcoin, and when following the ordinal protocol can be transferred to other taproot addresses. BRC20 transactions have introduced the token standard for Bitcoin, which is similar in theory to that of the ERC20 standard built on Ethereum, enabling the minting and transfer of tokens between peers. These transactions are made possible by Ordinals technology and utilize the native scripting language of Bitcoin. The BRC20 token standard allows for tokens to be named, have a set supply, and be transferred between parties, all assuming you opt into ordinal theory. As none of these changes Bitcoin's base layer consensus rules. Given the on-chain nature of these tokens, the use case for these tokens today is as follows: speculation and gambling. It's just as we thought, they're basically shitcoins. In prior issues, we've explained about ordinals and inscriptions and enabled through both the SegWit and Taproot soft fork. Readers can read more information on this topic here. Much of the controversy around ordinal inscriptions is that they are an alternate use of Bitcoin block space for something other than a purely financial transaction. This has led to a heated internal debate about whether or not inscriptions are a net good for the protocol, or whether this type of Bitcoin transaction is an exploit of some sort, which damages the base layer's efficiency as a settlement layer. I don't think it damages the efficiency as a settlement layer. The whole point of Bitcoin is that people can carry out transactions on Bitcoin. That's the whole point of it. Now, if it is possible to attach a JSON file or a JPEG onto the blockchain, then good luck to them. Let them do it. Obviously, they'll have to pay a fee for that, which is the whole point of the mempools getting full and the fees being spiked as a result. They'll pay a fee for that. And if they feel that that is a valuable use of their resources, good luck to them. I mine Bitcoin, so as a miner myself, I'm more than happy for them to give me their Bitcoin. If all they want to do is generate JPEGs, each to their own. I don't have any ill feeling towards it. And as far as I'm concerned, they can do whatever they want to do with their money. That's the beauty of life. I think that's the beauty of free market. The beauty of free market is people should be able to do whatever they want to do, as long as they're not breaking any laws, and as long as they're not harming anyone else. Then people are entitled to do what they want to do. And if throwing their money away is what they want to do, good luck to them. Let them do that. They'll learn in due course, or they'll run out of money. People who are irresponsible with money will learn very quickly they don't deserve to have that money. So I don't have any ill will towards them. They will just learn life, because that's just life. And I don't think Bitcoiners, each to their own, I don't think Bitcoiners necessarily should be particularly upset about this. And we certainly shouldn't be doing anything to change the consensus rules or make any amendments to the protocol to prevent this from happening again in the future. I think we shouldn't amend the protocol and make any changes to that. I mean, I do have something to say about Taproot and SegWit. Whilst they obviously are good, and obviously SegWit was very, very good indeed. But obviously the combination of SegWit and Taproot has enabled inscriptions, which in a way is something of an unforeseen consequence. And I think it's just another timely reminder to us that making changes to Bitcoin, even if it's a soft fork, does carry potential consequences that we can't always predict and foresee. So for me, it's another reason why we should move very, very slowly when updating Bitcoin. Yes, of course, we have to fix bugs. Those are fine. But when we're coming to the big things, the big changes, there are many other changes that are potentially on the cards that are coming through. And I just feel that we need to even be more thorough now to ensure that we don't introduce something that we don't fully understand and know the consequences for. I remember last year there was a lot of talk around a few changes to Bitcoin which would introduce vaults. I can't remember the name of the code now. I think it's CTV, check template verify, I think it is. I'm forgetting the name. I think it's Jeremy. Oh, I can't remember his name now. I'm drawing a blank, but he Jeremy Lubin, I want to say. No, I've probably butchered his name now. So sorry if I completely butchered your name, but yeah, I mean, he introduced that last year. There was a huge uproar around it. There was a huge uproar around how we introduce changes to Bitcoin. What sort of mechanisms do we use to agree a change to the consensus rules or the protocol, or sort of like a soft fork. And of course, I think in the end, Jeremy backed down from CTV and didn't push that through in the end. But there was talk about people using their nodes to either vote for or against that particular project. And my feeling about this is that we need to move slowly. And if we don't have everyone on board, then there shouldn't be any change. That's my feeling. I'm in the camp as Jimmy Song in terms of ossifying the code. Of course, not. Of course, there should still be the possibility to, both fixes, the usual maintenance that needs to be done. That, of course, that has to be done. But in terms of changes, I really am in favor of ossification, as long as it doesn't leave Bitcoin vulnerable. It has to move with the times. It has to, if there are essential upgrades, there needs to make it keep in line and keep in line. Then of course I'll be for that. And these issues are very difficult. It's never black and white. I'm sure there's a blur. There's a spectrum between what would amount to maintenance of the protocol and what would amount to an upgrade or a change. It's a very difficult. That's also a very difficult issue. But either way, I think we need to bring everyone along. As I said, there isn't necessarily any rule around consensus, around gathering consensus, because I run 2 nodes, as a matter of fact, and my vote counts, and my vote should count, and every other person who runs a node, their votes count as well. And there isn't a 50% majority or 60% majority is enough. No, it's everyone has to agree to it, and if everyone doesn't agree, then it should remain, because I'll just continue running my own code. It's yeah, that's a really deep rabbit hole. I'm not smart enough to really think about these subjects, or to have any sort of like major opinion on these subjects. But the very limited knowledge that I have, I mean, those are my general philosophical views on it. So take that as you see it. Now, there was another article that I wanted to delve into. I just thought we're talking about congestion on the main chain. Obviously, there must be other solutions that we should be able to look to. And that other solution, of course, is the Lightning Network. And the easiest, obviously, that you've got the bar tab analogy is the one that people use to describe the Lightning Network. I love that analogy. I think it's quite good. But of course, there are other analogies as well that can be used to describe the Lightning Network. But using the bar tab analogy, because it's well known and it's quite easy to explain. The Lightning Network just allows two people to enter into an agreement, two multi-sig, and that means that they effectively both own, they've effectively put the funds together into a multi-sig, and both of them can access the funds in that multi-sig. But the way that is designed on the Lightning Network, there are checks and balances in place to prevent one from taking the other's funds through the justice transaction, because whenever transactions are done, it creates a new state. Whenever another transaction is done, it creates a new state. And at any time, either the most up-to-date state could be published back to the blockchain at any time by either party to close the channel. But whilst the channel remains open, there's this back and forth that goes on in terms of transactions can happen many times, thereby augmenting the need for opening and closing channels, or the need for on-chain transactions. You only need two on-chain transactions: the transaction that opened the channel in the first place and the transaction that closed the channel at the end. But in between, all of the transactions that go back and forth are all done on the Lightning Network, off-chain, and the fees are pretty much minuscule. So that's why the Lightning Network is quite an important tool and technology. So let's delve into this article, because it probably does a far better job than what I've just done. But I thought I'd better give it a go. As I said, I'm not very clever, but I'll try. So, more efficient than MasterCard. With much of the news focusing on macro, the legacy financial system and central banks' heavy-handed interest rates, our coverage spent time analyzing the ever-changing Federal Reserve policy and unwinding of the everything bubble. Bitcoin and native metrics have looked promising, as many onlookers can summarize by looking at Bitcoin's year-to-date price performance. In today's article, we want to focus on the Lightning Network and some data we found interesting in relation to credit card processing and settlement efficiency when compared to traditional financial services. For starters, it's worth noting that the traditional use of the Bitcoin network for on-chain settlement is extremely efficient by settling transactions approximately every 10 minutes. Bitcoin might be most closely related to the Fedwire Funds service, which only settles about 200 million transactions per year, compared to Bitcoin's trailing one-year figure of 98.5 million transactions. As it stands today, the Bitcoin network is on pace to settle $3.5 trillion worth of change-adjusted value over the course of 2023 for costs of just $198 million, an equivalent fee rate of 0.006% for the average transaction. Whilst, and I think it's important, just pausing there for a second, I think it's important to just bear in mind that when merchants sell goods to consumers and they use the Visa network, Visa, MasterCard, they charge about 2 to 3%. They charge merchants about 2 to 3%. So when you think about it from that point of view, the transaction is going to be between a merchant and a consumer, and you've got the middleman Visa in there charging 2 to 3% of every transaction. Now, a $3.5 trillion transaction, is going to be significant, orders of magnitude greater than $198 million. because $198 million is 0.006, whereas, and that's orders of magnitude smaller than 2 to 3%. It's just insane. So when you look at it like that, and they say that technology, it takes something extraordinary to unseat the legacy technology. But people will suffer something that is pretty terrible. And if something new comes along that's maybe marginally better, people would suffer the old technology, because people have this tendency to just follow or carry on with what they know. But when you start talking about sums this big, and I think it's even worth just doing the math here, because 0.006, and that's times 3.5. Yeah, so we're talking about billions. We're talking billions rather than millions. That's insane. That's just insane. So we're talking billions is what the middleman Visa will charge. So using the Lightning Network, it's just significantly cheaper. So let's carry on with this article here. Despite Bitcoin's extreme efficiencies as a global immutable settlement network, it remained unideal for minuscule and instantaneous transactions, as the 10-minute block interval target as the 10-minute block interval target adds a latency to the settlement of transactions. This is okay for large sums of money, evidenced by the incumbent financial system, where net settlements of funds between financial intermediaries often don't finalize for days or weeks or on end. Think MasterCard or Visa settling their books on a net basis with a banking institution like JP Morgan. However, the need for sound internet money that could settle instantaneously for nearly no cost was still there. With the advent of the Lightning Network, the latency involved with sending a Bitcoin transaction, particularly for micropayment settlement, has all been vanished. This has brought about a whole new use case for Bitcoin, as the monetary medium is now finding itself being inserted into the tech stack of web applications and services across the globe. Just wanted to pause there again, and I'm sorry I keep pausing, but I think it's important to drive on a couple of things. So with Visa, when a transaction is made, that transaction doesn't settle, right? And what we mean is it doesn't settle is that it's not final. It means that that transaction could still be reversed. So you're not very sure. Although you may have given over, you as a merchant may have given your goods over to a consumer, right? You've handed the goods over, and yet that transaction could be reversed, by Visa or MasterCard. It's not final settlement. And final settlement may not take place for another 20 to 40 days. Just think about how insane that is. And, Visa and MasterCard, they have to deal with a lot of fraud issues in terms of people abusing that very process of someone just simply calling up and said, oh, I never received my goods. Can you please refund my money? And they just simply refund their money because they probably just don't have any way of proving otherwise. And this is the importance of finality and final settlement. And this is exactly the Lightning Network, because it's literally a Bitcoin transaction itself, is itself a final transaction, is itself finality. A Lightning Network transaction is a final transaction. You're still talking about dealing with a bearer instrument. That is the absolute beauty of the Lightning Network. It's so powerful. You get absolute certainty with this. So let's read on. As a refresher and overly simplified description, the Lightning Network works by node runners doing an on-chain transaction to open up payment channels with other nodes. This adds liquidity to the network and creates a network of channels when enough users open channels to one another. Lightning payments are sent from one node and hop across other nodes who have enough liquidity in their channels until the payment reaches its intended destination. By doing one on-chain payment to open a channel, funds on the Lightning Network are able to move with less friction and settle without waiting for 10-minute periods between blocks for each transaction until the channel gets closed with another on-chain transaction. These channels allow for lower fees as payments only paid to hop across nodes that have liquidity in their channel. So yes, I mean, it's just as I explained, but of course there is, yes, you don't even have to have a channel with every single person you want to pay. You just need to have a connection to a node who may also have connections to other nodes, which then creates that route until you get until the payment gets to the final destination. That is just, it's a beautiful thing, the Lightning Network. And you know, one of the other important points here, which the article sort of like skirts over a little bit, is that the Lightning Network itself does far more volume per second in transactions than Visa. So it is already orders of magnitude better than Visa. The Lightning Network is. It does more. It does lots more transactions per second than Visa. I mean, orders of magnitude more transactions more than Visa. It is instantaneous. It's final. It's far cheaper. Orders of magnitude cheaper. I mean, it's just amazing, and people don't really know or understand this just yet. And yes, I think people like me, I've got two Lightning nodes, Bitcoin and Lightning nodes. I've got two of them, and yes, I've got channels, and I balance my channels and all that. Yes, there is some complexity to that there, and I'm sure not many people would want to do that, but it doesn't have to. There are lots of options out there where you can actually have, you know, you don't need a node, but you can have sort of like a middle way between custodial and semi-custodial arrangements. Breeze is an example, which is sort of non-custodial, and you also have the async Phoenix wallet. Again, that's non-custodial as well. But these allow you to access the Lightning Network. These allow you to send money all of the time to anyone, anywhere, to connect and send money over the Lightning Network instantaneously. It's already there. People can use these things. They're really simple apps to use. I've got an app on my phone. I use Zeus. I connect Zeus to my node, and I'm able to transact over the Lightning Network from my node via my mobile phone on Zeus. Absolutely amazing. You know, there are other apps, many apps. It's just, there's just a proliferation. And you know, even if we want to go more granular, but you don't want to run your own node, there are organizations so like Voltage who set these things up and make it so easy. They so like take away all that complexity and handle it for you, and then just offer you the node. And then you can basically just do what really matters to you, which is basically send payments, receive payments on the Lightning Network, and you don't have to worry about liquidity or any of that stuff. So the Lightning Network is really just amazing, and I just, in time, people will get to understand this and understand why we Bitcoiners are just we see a bright orange future. Yeah, definitely a bright orange future. So just bringing this to a close. Well, this has been the first episode of the Bitcoin Digest, and hopefully, if you've listened this far, then thank you very much. Obviously, I'm really new to this, and I just wanted to share my views. I want an opportunity to share my views. I'd like people to join me on this Zoom call. This was done live. This was done live on Zoom. I didn't have any guests today, but anyone could have logged on to this link. Again, I'm displaying. Let me just go into full slide mode. I'm displaying right here, as you can see. That's what happens when you're doing live. That's what happens when you go live, right? So you can mess things up, and yes, there you are. I've sort of messed that up, but yes, going back to that. So you could join the link, just put in the meeting ID into Zoom, put in the passcode, and if you're available at 9 p.m., I'm going to be doing this at the same time tomorrow at 9 p.m. Feel free to join, and I look forward to seeing you all soon, and we can talk Bitcoin. I'm happy to speak to people. I'm happy for people to come along with questions or come along with their opinions, and we can talk about those opinions on Bitcoin, and yeah, let's get this discussion going. Well, it's been a real pleasure, and stay humble and stack sats, like Mart Odell will say. Thank you.